Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Cradle News Roundup, your one-stop shop for all news West Asia. Thank you for being here. To everyone who's already here, please make sure to hit that like button. Of course, my name is Esteban Carrillo. I am joined by columnist and editor for the Cradle, Sharmin Narwani, and in a few minutes we'll be joined by a columnist for the Cradle, Dr. Mohammed Hassan Suaidan. He should be joining us in just a couple of minutes. Also, a friendly reminder, make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet. We actually recently reached 80,000 subscribers, which honestly is amazing because in the span of about 3 weeks, we got in, I want to say over 20,000 subscribers. So really, really thank you to everyone. And please, underneath this video, in the description below, you can also find a link to our Patreon page, where for as little as $5 a month, you can become a direct supporter of the Cradle. Please support independent journalism. We really, really need your help. Boss, while we wait for Mohammed, let's discuss a bit what happened over the past day. Essentially, Iran has markedly intensified its attacks and also is sending very clear messages. Yesterday we saw an attack in the city of Dimona in the south of Israel. Of course, this is where their nuclear reactor is and where they developed their non-declared nuclear arsenal. Hassan Suaidan, thank you so much for joining us. Can you hear us? While he sets up, in any case, as I was saying, right, like yesterday we saw this attack. We saw the attack on the city of Arad, I believe is the name, which was, mass destruction, honestly. Images that we have grown very accustomed of seeing out of Lebanon, out of Yemen, out of Iran, out of Syria, of course, out of the occupied Palestinian territories. All of a sudden now we see them happen inside Israel. And of course, now we see Israel being very concerned about international law. No, all of a sudden it matters. All of a sudden we need to defend it, I guess. In any case, Sharmin, what do you think about, in particular, these past 24 hours and what Iran has showcased as far as the capabilities?
I think Iran. Hi, Mohammed. We're talking about Iran's recent strikes on Israel, Dimona, and civilian buildings, etc. What it's showcased. So, I think Iran is showing immediately that it will escalate along every point that the Israelis or Americans escalate, and that's such a difference from past conflict. But it's very important because it's for the first time training the enemy that everything they had expected from Iran for the last decades was now off the table. This was an entirely different Iran they were dealing with, one that was responding in kind. So, it's now they didn't hit the nuclear facility, as far as I know, in Dimona, but it was a first signal, a first tap, if you will. Okay, we're going to go here next. Mm-hmm. This is what they're doing. They're either going all out or they're giving a warning. This is what's going to happen. We can hit you exactly where we want to, and it'll be worse next time. And the Iranian authorities say this. Next time, it'll be a lot worse. So, but, in both cases, we're seeing very solid command and control, and strategic, they have their strategic hats on at all times. There's no willy-nilly hits like the Americans and Israelis are doing, and then which transforms into precise operational execution at the right time in the right place, but the bottom line is that Iran is preserving a new response equation. Whatever you do to us, we will do back to you and more. It's a very kind of structured deterrence. Deterrence in the past has taken time, right, to establish in this region against the Israeli enemy. But in this case, within 24 hours, deterrence is either established or the enemy escalates, and then once again, Iran responds. I think Iran's hitting of the residential areas, which is like kind of the only thing the Israeli army then allows, their sensors allowed to be
publication,
shown.
Right, of the images of the drone.
And there's zero sympathy, public sympathy for Israel crying about residential buildings being
And
targeted.
international law
But
and all of
if
that.
you recall the big Israeli strike or American strike on Iran when they hit 5 big residential structures, I mean, it was just mayhem. It's showing, yeah, you thought, and it's true, the Iranians and their allies have always talked about, doing what's right, doing what's moral. But, morality is out the window now. They're playing by the playbook that the US and the Israelis established, not to their liking, but this is the only way to, as many people say, the only languages Americans and Israelis understand is force. Counter force, equal force.
Exactly. Mohammed, why don't you give us your thoughts? How can we read? What's your read of the past 24 hours in particular? Or, well, I guess even the past 48 hours that we've seen Iran markedly escalate, even show off more of its capabilities?
Well, to be honest, I do think that the Iran we are seeing today is a country that has learned for the past 40 years. We are seeing a country, a leadership that solved a lot of problems it faced in the past phases. It learned a lot of lessons. It has a leadership that's so determined to achieve its own interests. And it gave the enemy 40 years of time to try to change things without going to such full-scale war. So what we are seeing today, I think it's a very normal reaction from a state that has been for 40 years fought by the US, by Israel, by the West, by everyone. So it's a very normal thing to see today. Let's us all remind all the people that what's happening in Iran isn't just in the past couple of years. It has been since 1979. Since 1979, they have been under siege. Their economy has been under sanctions. They have been hit once and twice and three times and many times. Their leaders have been killed. Their scientists have been killed. They have been banned to visit many countries. They have been targeted in every single way everyone can think about. Today, the Iranians are defending what they have been losing in the last 40 years. They were too patient because they wanted to give time for diplomacy. They wanted to give time for international order to try to solve things. But after killing their leader, after killing their mentor, what represents their Iranian leadership, after targeting their people to a limit no one can bear, then yes, what's happening today is a very normal reaction. And I think that we are still in the first phases of escalation. Today, Iran has different stages, different plans, different things that they are thinking about, and we are still in the first phases. And I think to a certain limit, this is what Trump understands today. Trump understands that he is under what we call in international relations the escalation trap, meaning by every time he goes towards a decision, the Iranians go and escalate things up. Here he has to take one of both decisions, even to escalate more, meaning going towards the trap because the Iranians are going to retaliate in much more escalation, or he'll have to back down, and that will be a strategic loss for the US. And this is where Trump is trapped today. So I do think that everything what's happening today is a normal reaction from Iran, what it's doing, and I don't think it's not abiding by international law. I really don't think that. What I really do think is that, and it's till now, it's still not acting by the American book, to be honest. The American book usually includes things like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing millions without looking behind. The American book means just killing the children in thousands and hundreds of thousands without caring about things. The American book we saw it in Gaza. Till now, no, the Iranians are showing a high level of morality in the war. Although, let us all remind people that in the first day of the war, a school has been targeted and tens of kids were killed. Yes. But Iranians didn't retaliate in the same message because there is a very high level of morality in the Iranian leadership. But they are retaliating with escalation. They are acting as true men in the war. This is how they are acting. If we see the region today, and I just remembered something. It's so silly for anyone to just say that in the region we have different parties that are assisting Iran. I don't see it this way because Iran has been hitting 6, 7 countries in the region, has been closing Hormuz Strait, has been threatening to close other straits. I don't think that Iran needs assistance. I think what's happening is that Iran is assisting everyone else. It's the other thing around. What's happening is that Iran is assisting Lebanon today. That Iran is assisting Iraq today. Iran is assisting Yemen today. Iran is assisting Syria today. Iran is assisting everyone in the region that really wants freedom from colonialism. That's what's happening today. That's the true narrative of the story today. It's a battle between two camps, colonial camp and the freedom camp. And Iran is the one that's assisting everyone who wants freedom in the region. That's the true narrative we want everyone to know. That's what's happening. And although it's a very high intense battle and high intense war, still the axis of resistance is acting in a very high level of morality. They are still acting and trying to add pressure in economics, in military, but not on the civilian level.
Very well put. I want to add something to this discussion, actually, because you talked about the escalation trap, Mohammed. And yesterday, Donald Trump, classic Donald Trump tweet, he says he demands that Iran open the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours. I believe 12 hours has passed by now, or a bit more probably, since he posted this. If not, they will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. And Iran, of course, not just said this would, of course, lead to a further escalation from us and to target power plants. They said information technology centers and also desalination plants. And then after this statement, they also released a map. And I don't know, for those people asking if Karim has a day off, he has a half a day off. He's actually running things right now. So Karim, I don't know if you have that image that the IRGC released that actually shows what they would be capable of targeting within the Persian Gulf, and of course, is mostly facilities in the Gulf nations. So, what is going to happen when these 48 hours runs out? I wonder. I don't know if you guys have any read on this.
Yeah, I mean, the spokesman that we're being seen, the young guy with the beard who has sort of become the spokesman for the main war room in Iran, put out a statement, and I don't know, Kenny, if you can put it on the screen. It's the Cradle tweeted it. I think Seema sent it in our group, so you can do that. You can put it up on the screen. He says, in response to Trump's statement, he says, everything is prepared for the complete destruction of all U.S. economic interests in West Asia. The terrorist president of the United States has continued his aggressive and destabilizing behavior, threatening that if Iran does not open the Strait of Hormuz, he will target Iran's power plants. And this, now what he says next is an important caveat for us to understand, because people are constantly saying Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz. It's not exactly true.
No.
He says, we've repeatedly stated that the Strait of Hormuz is only restricted to hostile and harmful traffic. It has not been fully closed and remains under our intelligent control. Harmless passage continues under specific regulations that ensure our security and interests. And guys, as maybe our viewers heard us in a few podcasts ago, we explained that Iran was setting up a procedure that I think it expects to carry on even beyond the war, is to formalize passage, to be able to have eyes on all ships and their ownership, etc., that go through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, he then continues, and in response to Trump, by saying, however, if U.S. threats against Iran's power plants are carried out, the following punitive measures will be implemented immediately. 1, the Strait of Hormuz will be fully closed and will not reopen until our damaged power plants are restored. 2, all power plants, energy infrastructure, and information communications technology infrastructure of the Zionist regime will be widely targeted. Easy peasy stuff, guys. As we repeated here on the Cradle, Israel has zero strategic depth. It is a tiny piece of flat land, by and large. 3, all similar companies in the region with U.S. shareholders will be completely destroyed. So all the various U.S. investments in power plants and, in major infrastructure in the Gulf nations, it sounds like he's saying they can be targeted too, to hopefully, I think, incentivize Gulf countries to talk Trump out of hitting Iran's civilian infrastructure. And then he finishes by saying, everything is ready for a major jihad aimed at the total destruction of U.S. economic interests in West Asia. We did not start this war, and we will not initiate it now. But if the enemy harms our power plants, we will do whatever is necessary to defend our country and national interests. So, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. He does go on a bit. You can check our tweet and our Telegram for the full statement. This is, as we were discussing earlier, it is an eye for an eye, instant strategic deterrence established. If they still don't get the message and they escalate, we will escalate immediately, and we will maybe even go further. And of course, it's always a bit further, right? Because the Iranians are not targeting U.S. territory, right, in the United States. They're targeting, they only have around them U.S. built facilities. Initially, it was all military bases, ammo depots, radar, hardware and equipment, and
hotel rooms,
interceptors, and U.S. troops. And then it expanded horizontally as the U.S. started and Israel started targeting, civilians in Iran. And so that's what they're going to do. It's a warning continuously of the Gulf states. I do want to mention something, and I don't know the timeline on this, but the former Prime Minister of Qatar, Hamad bin Jassim Al Thani, he was the guy running the Syrian war initially, and then left his post. But he's come out over the years with some hard truths about Qatar's participation in various things. And he says now, quote, as soon as we declare war on Iran, America will withdraw from the conflict, sell weapons to both sides, and use our resources to defeat both sides and expand the Greater Israel Project. I couldn't have said it better myself. It's important because although he's a former, not current prime minister, he was a huge influencer in Qatar and really carried strategic policies and foreign policies of the state for many years, and is obviously still a voice heard there. And I mean, he's important enough and comfortable enough in his own skin and his power base to speak out. There are many others in the Gulf who are not, right? Important journalists and analysts, only if they get an okay from the palace in Riyadh, etc., will they dare to do these things. Hamad bin Jassim is not that kind of character, and he is hopefully speaking out where others cannot. And I am sure that sentiment exists in the thinking element of many of these Persian Gulf states, because they've seen the U.S. completely ignore their immediate defensive needs. They've seen that happen. And, William got a lot of criticism yesterday for sounding like a naysayer, but when I listened back to it, I don't think he said anything specifically wrong. It's important to hear the other side, especially when you're in this, you're in a zone going, oh, this is going so well for us. You have to consider that in the end, and this is something I've known for many years, that the Americans are far away enough from the geographies that they destroy to make benefits out of almost any scenarios, win or lose. And in this case, they don't need the oil and gas, their allies do, right? Of course, they'll sell their allies down the road to become the richest and most prominent oil and gas vendors in the world, right? They will take advantage of almost any situation that develops. And Hamad bin Jassim is spot on by saying that we can easily get to a situation that the Americans sell weapons to both sides and use our oil and gas to defeat both sides for Israel to expand.
Before I let you go on, Mohammed, I just want to mention we have about 1,000 people watching, but not even 400 likes. We really need your support. Please make sure to hit that like button. Mohammed, same question, honestly. What's going to happen at the end of these 48 hours? What do you expect?
Well, first of all, I think that Trump proved for the world that he's not a man of his word in this war. I think we have several facts since the beginning of the war till today. The number one, well, Trump is really one of the most silliest men around the world. I think this became a fact. It was an opinion before the war. Now it's a fact. I think well, several Western and American credible newspapers and magazines and journals have been speaking about how have he been lying, treating the war in a very shallow way, just speaking that, well, I destroyed 100% of their maritime capabilities, I destroyed their missile capabilities and everything. At the same time, we are seeing countries or bases in the region are being hit, and we are seeing the Iranians escalating. So I think to a certain limit, no one really takes Trump's words seriously now after everything has been happening. And fact number two is that even if he was serious that he is going to do a certain step in the war, also fact number two is that the Iranians have the capabilities and the intentions to just go also and escalate against the Americans. And let us just speak about what Ali Akbar Vilayati just said a couple of minutes ago, which is the advisor of the Supreme Leader. He said that if the Gulf countries don't want to reach a phase where they don't have electricity, they should tell Trump that, well, don't target the Iranian infrastructure. So I think the main theme of this war, is that security of the Gulf is related to security of Iran. You can't have a secure Gulf without a secure Iran. That's the main thing. And I think this is one of the lessons the Iranians learned. The Iranians in the previous phases used to usually target only Israel as part of the war. Now they are saying that Israel is only a small part of the war. Today, it's the security of the Gulf as a whole for the security of Iran. And this is much more pressuring for the Americans. So I think in the next 12 hours, or the next hours, because some of Donald Trump's duration have passed. Mm-hmm. I don't think that anything will change. But why did he say 48 hours? I think what he is trying to do, Trump really needs to go towards negotiations. I'm really convinced that Trump is trapped today. He needs negotiations. What my information says is that he has sent till today 6 times for the Iranians messages that he needs negotiations. 3 of these times are through Turkey. But the Iranians' reply for the 6 messages was they didn't even reply. They didn't even give an answer. They didn't even give any word regarding what have been happening. The Americans escalated in the last time, not this time, but previously, by threatening the Iranians that if you don't go towards, or if you don't reply to our messages, whether yes or no, just reply, tell us your opinion, then we are going to increase the level of killing your leaders inside of Iran. Still, Iran didn't reply. I think now it's another way Trump is doing to force the Iranians just to give back any answer to his messages. I think, and let's not forget that yesterday, Kushner also spoke about some conditions of the negotiations, what the Americans may be willing to go for. So I think these 48 hours are what Trump is trying to give the Iranians to force them to just reply to the messages. After they end, I think that he'll continue in the same level of the war. What I think is a very serious thing we should take into consideration is the capability or is the possibility of bringing boots on ground inside of Iran. I think this is one of the scenarios that Trump is thinking about, although I also think that it's one of the stupidest scenarios, because I believe that just going, that's the decision of the American decision to go towards the war was a stupid decision from the beginning, because the Iranians have been sending messages to the whole, in the media, in the official media, through the IRGC, through different, and the politics and diplomacy, that a target to Iran will directly lead to targeting all the Gulf. We are going to a regional war. But Trump didn't receive the message. So from the beginning, it was a stupid decision, and he is still taking the region towards an escalation with his stupid decisions. So yes, that's why I put the possibility of boots on ground, although I think also it's a stupid decision, because this means that the Americans will bear a very huge cost. So the 48 hours, I think, it's just Trump giving time for the Iranians to to let them lean towards negotiations, not more than that.
To pick up the phone. Yeah. Go ahead, Sharmeen. Go ahead.
I just, again, Trump is just looking at what's in front of him. His military advisors should be advising him about the further escalation, horizontal escalation possibilities that he's just not focused on now because they're not the problems right in front of his eyes. I mean, for one, Ansar Allah, okay, this wild card, has stayed out of the fight so far. They've said that their hands are on the trigger. The decision has already been made. They're just waiting. And like, y'all said at the beginning, Iran has managed this war alone, and it's lifted and carried many of its allies so far. This idea that Iran needs Russia or China or Yemen or anything doesn't yet exist, right? They seem calm, measured, very hyper-focused on objectives, carrying them out. Each new development serves a policy objective, right? And strategic deterrence by the enemy. So Ansar Allah so far stayed out of the war. If they come in, the conflict expands to Bab al-Mandab, right? Bab al-Mandab is like sort of the gateway to, ships going through the Red Sea to the Suez Canal, right? If they don't have the Bab al-Mandab, like we saw in years past, like during the earlier part of the Gaza war when Yemen was involved, they have to make the big hike all the way around from the Indian Ocean down through the Cape of Good Hope, at the tip, the bottom tip of the African continent, up the other side, around North Africa into the Mediterranean, Europe, right? So that's really important. The other thing that Ansar Allah joining and shutting down the Bab al-Mandab or threatening vessels that traverse it is that, don't forget, the Saudis have been able to move several million barrels of oil per day, which the Western media has, screamed from their headlines as though that's a panacea for all things. It isn't. Those and the Saudis do it by moving oil from Yanbu and across Saudi Arabia on their east-west pipeline. Delivering it on the Red Sea coast and then taking it up through the Suez, right? That could go offline immediately. I mean, the Americans are so desperate, right, that they removed Iranian oil sanctions and will buy Iranian oil, right? So that's one way the war can expand. The other way is, Pakistan, for instance, it does have a mutual defense pact with the Saudis. What's happening, the American threat to unleash their Kurdish mercenaries or their Pakistani Baluchi mercenaries. These are groups that have extensive relations with the Americans and the Israelis, two countries specifically, and try to set off, wars inside Iran or civil conflict inside Iran. Also, in terms of troops, it's not just landing on Harg Island, which is so what's it called? What do you do when it's so, you have a preview before a movie's release? It's so previewed that one thinks, would they really be that stupid? It's not like Harg Island is not the most watched island for the Iranians at this moment. But, we have seen increasingly the mention of the 3 long contested islands that Iran controls in the Gulf, which is the Abu Musa, Greater Tomb, and Lesser Tomb Islands, which the UAE claims, but Iran has controlled since the Shah's days in the early 1970s. I think it was 1971. There's also, there's a lot that Iran can do back. It's where they target in the UAE, for instance. Mm-hmm. The UAE seems to increasingly be a big target for Iran because of its deep connections to, U.S. Technology and Israeli technology innovation, like spying on civilians and AI and data centers, which the Iranians have identified as targets. But let's not forget, Dubai, right? The UAE is divided into seven emirates. Dubai is kind of like, not so much into foreign policy, as long as people are thriving here, people are coming here, they're spending their money here, they're buying property here. We're perfect, safe tourist destination. Abu Dhabi, where which is ruled by the current president of the UAE, Mohammed bin Zayed, may increasingly become a target because he is the architect of the Abraham's Accords with Jared Kushner. He is the one who wants to bring Israel into Somaliland and create a choke point, for their rivals in the region, including Saudi Arabia potentially. He is the one driving the most aggressive, nefarious foreign policy that has alarmed his fellow Gulf neighbors as well as Iran, Turkey, countries in North Africa, Eritrea, Somalia, Sudan, right? So I think this is just a tip of the iceberg on how the war can move horizontally, further expand horizontally into new theaters, or bring new escalations into the existing zone of conflict.
Exactly. Let me mention a couple of things. First of all, we had multiple super chats, so thank you to everyone who has shown their love for the Cradle. Second, and just to add my own 2 cents about Donald Trump's tweet, I think you also, like exactly as Mohammed said, he has proven himself to be a very not serious person, right? Like completely someone that you cannot believe. And if anything, what we have seen over the past 3 weeks is that Donald Trump and his entire cabinet are constantly putting out statements, saying things that are verifiably untrue in an attempt to keep the price of oil down, right? So this 48-hour thing could also be that. He might say something else at the end of it. But speaking about this expansion of the war, right, and like the further theaters, over the past 48 hours, another one of the big news items was the reported ballistic or intermediate range ballistic missile that Iran launched towards Diego Garcia, actually 2 of them. The IRGC later claimed it wasn't them. This is now their line right now. At the same time, Diego Garcia, this is an island in the Indian Ocean that is controlled by the UK, actually an island that was ethnically cleansed in order to build these bases. The UK has now sent a submarine to the Arab Sea. I think you guys will have to correct me if I'm wrong. In this expansion of the theater. Before I let you guys go on, because I want to hear your guys' thoughts about the IRGC denying that it was them, I will say, I think this is just part of psychological warfare. Iran is currently a victim of a war that expands from the military to the economic, to the information, to the psychological. And I feel like them doing this now, denying that it was them, could also be them, starting to battle in this space, right? The psychological space. In any case, Mohammed, actually, if you can, what do you think about this alleged strike and the Iranians' eventual denial?
Look, as I started in this episode, I think that the Iranians have learned a lot of lessons. One of these lessons is what to deny and what to assure. Well, no one today can say that this was an Iranian missile, but at the same time, no one truly believes that it wasn't. So today, the narrative is all in the gray area. And I think that's what the Iranians want. The Iranians want the Americans to keep in their mind that, yes, we can reach places you didn't think we can. But did we do this? Oh, I don't know. You have to analyze that. I think that's what the Iranians want. That's one of the lessons that they have been learning in the last years. And if we really assess the Iranians' actions, militarily, politically, in the media, and diplomacy, yes, today we are seeing a new version of Iran. But this new version of Iran wasn't born in February 28. It is a cumulative thing for the past several decades. So I think, yes, Iran doesn't have an interest in saying that it did send this missile. At the same time, it doesn't have an interest in denying it as if it's something Iran is ashamed of. It needs the narrative to stay in the gray area. That's why it's only sent a small message of denying unofficially to a certain limit, and that's what keeps the narrative alive. And that's what also lets Donald Trump, or lets the Americans feel more deterred. And here, there's a very important thing. One of the lessons the Iranians learned is that why don't we act as the crazy ones this time? Trump have also been sending the world the message that I'm the crazy one that no one can expect what to do. Today, the Iranians are telling everyone, if you are crazier than we are crazy, then we are much more crazier than you are. So we are the ones that you can't expect. I think that's how they are acting. They took his own theory, they took his own actions, and just prove and just developed them to have a very more developed, crazy country going towards a regional war. And that's what's making everyone in the region frightened. The Gulf, Israel, Turkey, the US, everyone in the region today, they are frightened just because of the fact that the Iranians, that you can't expect how the Iranians are going to act. Will the Iranians hit the Gulf at the beginning? Oh, yes, they hit. Will they hit the infrastructure? Yes, they did. Will they hit the energy? Yes, they did. Will they close Hormuz? Yes, they did. Will they hit the Americans? Yes, they did. Everything crazy, they have been doing it. And the funny thing is that, or the ironic thing is that, they are saying that they're telling the world, if you think this is crazy, you have to wait till the next phases. So this is how you send messages to the world. This is how you deter a much stronger enemy than you. No, everyone knows that. Yes, the US is much stronger than Iran. Everyone knows that in terms of military capabilities, the US has much more military capabilities than Iran. But what Iran today have been able to do is that it told the craziest man around the world, Donald Trump, that we are much more crazier than you. You can't expect what we can do. I think this is one of the main goals today. And this is how they are deterring the Americans.
Very interesting.
It's so interesting. I mean, this is basically the bull in the China shop tactic of psychological warfare. I like it. I'm not sure the Iranians can carry it off, but I mean, their denial on Diego Garcia didn't come immediately, right? It came on the back of us visually seeing the tracking, locking down, and then targeting of an and hitting of an F-35. And then suddenly Iran has, this Diego Garcia thing comes up, and Iran has, oh my God, longer range missiles than we thought, and then the Diego Garcia denial also comes on the back of the denial that yesterday that sort of popped up on Iranian media, then disappeared within 30 minutes, which was a warning to Qatar, asking Qataris to leave Doha or leave Qatar. And very soon after that warning was taken off Iranian media and social media, and various Iranian officials said that Iran had issued no warning to evacuate Doha or Qatari media offices, and that the claims circulating online are false. I mean, I'm curious about what you think about that, Mohammed, because a lot of this happened in Arabic, right? But I also read that the Qataris immediately got on their hotline to the Iranians, and that's what de-escalated the situation, had Iranians media then pull off the warning. Do you have any information on that?
We need to unmute.
No, we can't hear you.
It's not me. Okay.
There, now we can. Go ahead.
It wasn't me. Yeah. What happened is that today the Iranians are so sensitive. You just can't go on Al Jazeera and just say that, well, the Americans should hit the Iranian infrastructure, they should pressure the people. Today, the Iranians are a leadership, a country, people that are really hit. They are too sensitive, and they are reacting based on what they feel as a very high threat. What happened yesterday is that on Al Jazeera, from the beginning of the war till now, the narrative was too pro-American. And the Iranians didn't have a huge problem with this, but the main problem was when on Al Jazeera, one of the main people who have managerial positions was on TV live, and he spoke about why don't the Americans pressure the people, why don't they hit the infrastructure, why don't they hit the energy infrastructure, and why don't they just keep the country without electricity. So the narrative moved from just supporting the American one to telling the Americans go and kill their people. That's what made the Iranians think in a new way, in a different way. They thought that we need to deter Al Jazeera. We don't need an Arabic platform that just speaks and tells the Americans what to do. What happened yesterday is that they published a threat that included subliminal messages. It wasn't a direct message. It was a message that they knew Al Jazeera would understand. Directly after that, several calls were from Qatar to Iran, and they told them that, yeah, well, it's a matter of a problem in media. We can solve it by diplomacy. Why you don't have to go towards military escalation. And that's when the Iranians took back this threat based on many promises from the Qataris that they are going to change the way they are treating the narrative of the war.
You know, this is so interesting because for years and years, the Americans and Israelis strove to do, and Saudis strove to do this with Al Jazeera, and Iran did it within 30 minutes. If in fact it carries it through. Of course, as journalists, we don't like any efforts to censor media, but I have to say there is a real difference between media inciting and media reporting facts. Okay, we may have a point of view here, but we try to stick with the facts, even with our point of view. We're not saying go out and kill someone. This is what we should do. Get your national whatever together. And so I mean, I think, I've called them since the Syrian war. I've called a lot of journalists, Western journalists, and even Arab media, which is often owned by the same the kinds of billionaires and rulers that completely fall in the Western narrative. I call them media combatants, because so often they print false information to incite populations. You know, I mean, propaganda 101. But what's interesting is that an Iranian official who spoke to Al Mayadeen, I think it was today, listed the 6 conditions for stopping attacks. We know many of them: guarantee of no recurrence of war, closing of U.S. military bases in the region, reparations payments by the aggressor, etc. But this one, I don't think I'd seen. Number 6 is prosecution of enemy media elements and their extradition to Iran. Now, I don't think they're talking about Al Jazeera, because there's no reason to extradite, Qatari or other nationals to Iran. My view was perhaps Iran International. I don't know. Iran International has been a thorn in the side of the Iranians for a really long time, because their rhetoric, I mean, they don't even bother. They're kind of like the Sun now, or I don't know. What do you have? They literally make up stuff whole cloth and then amplify it across media platforms. Yeah, they do polls just for their completely anti-government audiences, and then those polls get ricocheted around Western media as though this is what 90% of Iranians think this, etc. Nobody looks at the small print. And I know when the Saudis and Iranians did their rapprochement deal, funding of outlets like Iran International were on the negotiating table. So this is a big pet peeve of the Iranians. Speaking of bulls in China shops and new Iranian behavior that we have not seen in ever before, right, Mohammed? I just want to bring attention. I don't know if somebody can post the screenshot that I'd put in our group earlier, but there is Ehud Barak, former Prime Minister of Israel, went on Israel's Channel 13 and sort of said a lot of things, to put it mildly. He said, we could not assess the Iranian strategy. They had no idea what was coming. They had no idea, despite Iran's claims that it would do all these things, they had no idea that Iran would act this way and go to this extent and expand the war horizontally and hit, an eye for an eye. He says, because we couldn't assess the strategy, We cannot make any progress. Then he says, America has not won any war in the last 60 years. Stop lying to us so much. We can neither open the Strait of Hormuz nor destroy Iran's nuclear and missile power. I mean, I don't know. Somebody must have injected him with his truth serum. But then he goes to the crux of the matter, which everyone needs to pay attention to. Barak says, after 2.5 years, we are still at square one. Hamas and Hezbollah are still standing, and the nuclear and missile threat of Iran remains. At least don't lie so openly. So I think there's a lot of eyes that are being opened in Israel. And of course, this is Netanyahu's opposition. So they're going wild because Israel is taking a lot of hits. And those are likely to continue because Iran is in no mood and has zero interest in negotiating a solution to this war until it achieves its strategic objectives, until it is within close distance of attaining the concessions it wants from the Israelis and Americans. And of course, when we first heard Iran's demands, like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, we all went, ha, reparations from the Americans, ha. But now you can see how some of these things could be hammered together. I mean, certainly, the Gulf was going to spend $3.5 trillion. They were just going to give it to Trump, right? When he went and visited the Gulf after becoming president. He was just going to give it to him. Guess what? That money can also go to Iran. Iran can take it in gold. I mean, from the Americans, they can take it. I mean, the release of all their billions of dollars that the Americans and Europeans have held, and even South Korea has held for decades. The transfer of certain kinds of equipment, just the fact that the U.S. has removed sanctions on Iran, some of the payment could be exacted by the removal of sanctions so Iran can make the money that it wouldn't otherwise. I mean, there's many ways to piece together a financial deal, all right? So even that which seemed impossible seems possible in my view. But at the same time, Iran will never let what happened, Mohammed, after the Iran-Iraq war? Iran said never again, okay? Never again will we allow from this neighboring country of ours for foreign projectiles, okay, offensive projectiles to be facing Iran, right, and launched from there at us again. Now that equation has moved to the Persian Gulf. It's moved beyond Iraq because all of these countries, or most of them, have been complicit in, if not allowing Americans to launch drones, jets, and other things from their territories, they have allowed Americans and Israelis to use their airspace, which is just as much of an infraction. The Iranians will continue this war, in my view, until somebody puts themselves as an intermediary. My view is it'll be Beijing or Moscow or both, and maybe even Pakistan. Okay, maybe even Pakistan, to forge a new Persian Gulf security architecture that is managed entirely by littoral states and excludes any foreign military presence, including Pakistani, Russian, and Chinese. And I think those two things are very, very within the realm of possibility. So, but Ehud Barak talking like this, it just shows that in Israel, as we saw even before October 7th, 2023, that Israelis were pouring onto the streets against the violation of laws and the attempt by the Netanyahu government to change laws that were not beneficial for the state, and that animosity and hostility has continued. Sometimes the Israelis felt that they have been in ascendance and felt good about it, but I don't see there being any way to turn this around for Israel at this point. They stupidly opened a northern front, thinking the Americans would wage the war with Iran for them, and they could then use that cover and go into Lebanon and secure all of the south of Lebanon and annex it even. And they are being thwarted at every point. So I don't think there's any coming back for Israel, and Netanyahu is just going to have crisis after crisis to contend with. And these kind of voices, like Ehud Barak's, are going to be louder, in my view, in the future.
Let's unmute Hassan, please, Karim, before I... there you are.
Kenny, why do you even mute him? You just like to play with buttons.
No,
Such
it's
a
because
guy.
I don't know if you hear it, but we can hear you through Mohammed's speakers. So that's why I asked Karim to mute him. And actually, I don't know, Hassan, because I what I really want to hear from you is in particular what Sharmin said, like the stupid decision to open a front in the north. I don't know if you can also give us a breakdown of what's happening in Lebanon currently.
Please.
Yes, for what's happening in Lebanon today. Number one, it's the Israelis are too surprised in what's happening in Lebanon. To be honest, the whole world is surprised in what's happening in Lebanon. For more than 1 year, the narrative was that there is no resistance in Lebanon. The resistance has been killed, and they can't do anything more than that. What happened is that after 20 days of the war, the battles, you are still hearing in the news villages called Khiyam, villages called Marun al-Ras, villages called the Taiba. What are these? These are villages that are on the borders with occupied Palestine, meaning that after 15 months of full Israeli control of the south, obviously by fire and by intelligence, today the battles are still on the borders. That's something, it's like a legend is happening there. It's something no one can believe that they are happening. So, based on the ground battle, it's still at the borders between Lebanon and occupied Palestine. Sorry, in case of the missiles, we are still seeing missiles reaching 200 kilometers inside of Israel. We are still seeing missiles that are reaching the north, reaching Tel Aviv, and that's also a surprising thing for Israel and for everyone. And I think this is the number one thing that Israel lost in this war till now is the surprise. In the last war in 2006, every time Israel had a war with Lebanon, the first surprise was from the Israelis. It's always us that are surprised and just don't know what to do. Now it's everything around. Today, the Israelis have been surprised that, there is still something called Hezbollah. There's still something called resistance, and there's still an enemy here in the country that can threaten us. And that's the main thing that Hezbollah was able to do. And there are three main phases we should take into consideration, or three main things. Number one, the intelligence problems that Hezbollah faced in the last war. It's obvious that they are not facing today. The communication problems between the leadership and the people on ground, also it seems that it's not found anymore, because in the last war there were really serious problems. And number three, it's how you fire your missiles. It's obvious that now they have a much more capability of firing missiles. So the whole path of the war till now in Lebanon, it's positive. The Israelis are surprised in the reaction, and that's why we expect an escalation from the Israelis. And I think what the Israelis are bargaining on is that they can split the two wars, the Iranian one and the Lebanese one. They can, to a certain limit, I think the Israelis can accept stopping the war with Iran, but they can't accept stopping the war with Hezbollah in the way it's now. It's now continuing. And I think that's how Donald Trump is thinking. But the Iranian message to the US and to Israel that stopping the war in all the region, that's one of the conditions of the war. You have to stop the war on Iran, and you have to stop the war on Lebanon at the same time. Because that's one of the conditions of Iran till now. So if you want to just summarize what's happening in Lebanon, today the Israelis took the decision of escalating things regarding the invasion, the ground invasion, and is expected in the next hours to see serious steps from the Israeli army trying to control parts of South Lebanon. And I think this is where I think this is what the resistance have been planning to react based on. So I think the next couple of hours we're going to hear a lot of news about the ground battle, and this will be the main title of the war. And the next phase, the main thing that will tell the story of the end of the war is how the ground invasion will go in the next couple of hours.
Mohammed,
I mean, I'm so curious. How do the Israelis intend to put 100 or 450,000 soldiers on the ground there? I mean, the larger the numbers, the more easy the targeting.
I want to. No, go ahead, Mohammed. Go ahead, because I have another question for you, the different one.
Well, I do think that they are gonna move in the same way they moved in the last war. The Israelis are in the last war. What they did is that they sent robots, they sent cars, and they sent Merkavas and everything, and their soldiers were just moving behind everything. So what they did in the last war, they always say that there's a new thing in international relations called taking from the enemy the heroism, because they knew that what Hezbollah has an advantage over Israel is that the people fighting are heroes, meaning that they don't care about their lives. There is between the Israeli military and Hezbollah, there is one step that the Hezbollah soldier is willing to take, one extra step. And this extra step is what puts the possibility of being killed in battle more than 90%. The Israeli soldier isn't willing to go to this phase. That's why usually the Israelis try to not let the Hezbollah soldiers to just go towards a direct confrontation with the Israeli soldiers. I think now what they are going to do is, of course, use the fire jets, use the drones, use the robots, use the Merkavas, and the soldiers will just be behind all of this. But at the same time, I think that, and to a certain limit, I know that the Hezbollah's plans have taken into consideration that this they don't want it to work for the Israelis. So their plans are much different than the plans they used to have in the last war. That's why I think that we are going to really see a huge number of Israeli soldiers being killed in south of Lebanon.
Lots of casualties.
And let's not
they're
forget
using a lot
also
of. Let me, if you don't mind, Shamin, because I want to ask Mohammed something, because we don't have him on the podcast too often, and I do want to hear your thoughts on the political side of things. Like, where do you think the Lebanese government is going to be landing as this war continues to expand? And of course, because we just put it on screen, I think earlier today, the war minister of Israel said that he ordered not just the expansion of operations, but the expansion of the destruction of South Lebanon. He's already said we're not going to let the people come back.
Gaza style.
The Gaza style, exactly. What we did in Gaza, we're doing in South Lebanon. Like I said, they're even using white phosphorus pretty liberally. What do you make of the? I mean, what is your take on what the government of Lebanon's next steps?
Well, I really do think that it's not something important to speak about, because politically speaking, every time in Lebanon, the Lebanese government and the Lebanese political decisions and the Lebanese political life all depends on the balance of power with Israel. All depends on the balance of power with the United States. Always depends on the balance of power between the resistance and between its enemies. If the war ends with Hezbollah having a victory, then you will see how this thing will be translated inside the Lebanese political life. And if Hezbollah lost, like what happened in the last war, where Hezbollah they didn't lose on a strategic level, but they got hit tactically a lot. So this was reflected in the Lebanese political life. That's why I don't really care about how the government is acting today. It was never an important thing. It's very important here to just remind people what happened in 2006. The first day of the war in 2006, the Lebanese government took a decision to ban Hezbollah. They criticized Hezbollah, they attacked Hezbollah, and all of the war they have been acting with the United States of America just to fight Hezbollah, until the Lebanese Prime Minister at that time, Fuad Sanyura, suggested a 7-point plan. That the aim of it was to stop the war, but at the same time to disarm Hezbollah. So what's happening today, very similar thing happened in 2006. What stopped that path at that time is that Hezbollah ended the war victorious. When you end the war victorious, you reflect it in the Lebanese politics. Today, at the same time, because the Lebanese politicians don't have a margin of freedom to act.
True.
We have a lot of dolls inside of Lebanon. We have a lot of puppets inside of Lebanon. They are all controlled by Gulf countries, Americans, and different French and everything. But that's why I really don't care about whether they go to take a picture in Cyprus with the Israelis, whether they go towards negotiations, whatever they do. It really doesn't matter on the strategic level. It's something, yeah, on the tactical level, yes, it's frustrating, but on the strategic level, it really doesn't matter. What really matters is what's happening on ground in the battle. If Hezbollah wins, this will be reflected in the war. And let me just add one last thing.
Of course.
One of the reasons the Lebanese government and the Lebanese president are moving very fast and asking the Americans, let's go to negotiations and pressuring to go for negotiations, is that it's because they are seeing that Hezbollah is making very good job in the battle. They are afraid that Hezbollah is going to win the war. And that's the main problem.
Very well put.
They lose Lebanon.
Yes. Yes.
I have to also ask, was it just yesterday? Honestly, time just goes by so
It just meshes. It feels like
yeah, everything condensed. Was it yesterday that the Lebanese resistance hit Israel hard in the north and then Iran in the south? Or was it the day before?
Was it what?
Was it yesterday or the day before that as Hezbollah was hitting in the north, Israel in the north, Iran was hitting in the south?
Yeah, no, it was yesterday. And
Yesterday?
Yeah, no, it was yesterday, but this was not the first time. Well, let me explain how the.
Yeah, I want to know how, is there, remember Unity of the Fronts, that whole like notion that existed and then was gone? Do you think this is coordinated carefully?
Yeah, I do think that. And it's a very important question because it's very important for the people to see how the strategy of the war is moving. One of the smartest thing Hezbollah did is that he entered the war when Iran entered the war. Why? Now, the only thing that Hezbollah has to do is to fire towards the north. Because the south, the middle, Tel Aviv is all being handled by Iran. But every Iranian missile going inside of Israel, Hezbollah is benefiting of. So the strategy between Iran and Hezbollah is that leave the north for Hezbollah and let the Iranians hit the south and the middle, Tel Aviv. And this is how we can balance our firepower. Iran hits the north every once and then, but the main role of Hezbollah is hitting the north. So it's really, yes, distribution of roles inside of the war. And that's how you act as an axis. So for every person who used to think that there is nothing called axis of resistance, today we are seeing an axis of resistance. We are seeing the Iraqis targeting the American embassy and telling them, if you continue hitting Dahi, we are going to hit the American embassy. This is an axis. We can see coordinated firepower between Iran and Hezbollah. This is an axis. We are seeing the Yemenis waiting for the right time to enter. This is an axis. So today, one of the most important things Iran did is that it gave rebirth to an axis that was being viewed by many that it was killed.
And imagine for how long people have been saying, oh, the axis is over. Now that the whole axis is weakened, I mean, we've never seen the elements stronger in many senses. Mohammed, where does Israel target its interceptors at this point? North, south, central? What the hell?
I read something interesting yesterday. Sorry, Mohammed, just because this thought that the attack yesterday in Arad may have happened the way it happened because Israel had to move, some of the air defense batteries to protect, of course, Tel Aviv and the other cities, because there's another, conversation that has been going on for a few weeks now, and is how many interceptors are even left. So I just wanted to add that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that Not only the Israelis, even the Americans have a very big problem regarding interceptors because, well, if you see what's happening every day that passes on, we can see more missiles that are reaching their targets, and I think this is also this isn't by chance. I think this is one of Iran's strategies. I think this is how the Iranians have been thinking from day one, that they are working in a strategy by just letting the interceptors capacity and amount decrease by time, and that's when they increase their missiles, the number of their missiles. That's where their missiles reach their targets. And if you see today what the American media have been speaking about, they are all speaking about the problem of interceptors, and they are thinking more than Iran. That's the most important thing. The Americans are thinking today, if Iran did this to us, what about China tomorrow? What if China decided to enter a war with us? And let us also remind the people with a very important fact. What is Iran? Let us start from the beginning. A regional power under sanctions for 40 years, a bad economy that doesn't have a developed technology. No country was able to assist it. Even Russia and China, they used to be part of sanctions on Iran. This is Iran today that is humiliating the number one empire of the world. The country, the empire that has been controlling the world for decades. So this is Iran. It's a country being sanctioned for 40 years. So if Iran is doing so, what about China? This is the main questions in Americans' minds.
I mean, there's so many other movements happening while the perception persists that Iran is delivering kind of military answers that is stunning the world, and obviously putting, the U.S. and Israel on the back foot. And one of them is the fact that Russians and others are now just moving ships to Cuba, breaking the siege. There's just the sense that who are you anymore? That is the biggest blow, not just for the U.S., but I would imagine particularly for this president.
Particularly indeed. Guys, I think we can wrap it up for today. We've covered as much as it is possible. I want to thank everyone who joined today. We actually had nearly 2,000 people on this stream. So thank you very much. We have still less than 1,000 likes. And, that just breaks my heart that I know Karim is also, lamenting himself right now. But in any case, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, check out the memberships here on the YouTube, on our YouTube page, but also underneath in the description below, you can find the link to the Patreon page where you can become a direct supporter of The Cradle for as little as $5 a month. Please support independent journalism. And of course, many thanks to all of the Patreons, to all of the new subscribers. And we'll see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. I think it's 6 p.m. GMT. And of course, special thanks to Dr. Mohammed Hassan Swaidan for being here, and to Charmaine as well. We will see you guys tomorrow. So bye-bye.
Over 4 years in, and despite all the censorship, website attacks, and war across West Asia, The Cradle hit 1 million monthly readers in 2025. And we couldn't be more grateful. Up until this moment, you've had access to all our work for free. Over 30,000 articles, including investigations, analysis, interviews, news content, videos, podcasts, and more. All of this without paywall, without harassing you and hunting you down for donations. But now it's do or die. December 31st, 2026 is the deadline for The Cradle to become completely reader funded, because that's the model all media should have. When readers pay for your content, it means media outlets live or die based on whether they're producing reliable, intellectually stimulating information analyses that simply isn't available elsewhere.
يعني يلا